He stepped up to the glass doors of Providence Trust Bank shortly after lunch. The sun high enough to glint off the polished chrome handles, but not so bright as to banish the shadows that curled beneath the awning. From the curb, Marcus James, center of headlines and boardroom whispers, yet scarcely recognized in a paint-streaked hoodie and scuffed sneakers, looked every bit the ordinary passerby on a quiet Tuesday. His gaze swept the facade, the logo he'd designed, the marble steps he'd paid for, the revolving doors he'd financed. But today, he would enter unannounced, unseen, and perhaps unwelcomed. A crisp autumn breeze tugged at the hem of his sweatshirt, as though even the weather wanted to warn him off. He inhaled, tasting the city's hum. Distant car horns, the scrape of a bicycle chain, the faint whir of an air conditioner. None of it belonged exclusively to him anymore. He had built this bank from nothing, opening its doors to dreamers, to families, to those who had been told no one too many times. Yet now, as he stood beneath the porcelain sign bearing his name, he was about to learn the bitter lesson that institutions have long memories, but can suffer catastrophic lapses of recognition. Pushing through the doors, Marcus adopted the posture of a client, or at least someone who might be. Shoulders relaxed, chin level, eyes polite. He didn't glance at the marble floors or the twin rows of tellers. He didn't let the muted gray of the lobby, the chill of the air conditioning, give him pause. All he wanted was a quiet moment of gratitude. A nod, a handshake, perhaps even a surprise that would get the team buzzing. After all, it had been the biggest quarter in the bank's history. Bonuses were due, celebrations imminent. He'd prepared a stack of checks to hand out personally, an old-school gesture to show that behind the numbers was a father figure, a mentor who cared. Instead, he found suspicion sharpened into a blade of protocol. "Excuse me, sir." A guard in a black suit and tie stepped in front of him, folding his arms with practiced stiffness. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried an earpiece so discreet it might have been a fashion statement. "Can I help you?" Marcus shifted forward, flashing a friendly smile. "I'm here to... Are you expecting delivery? A drop-off? A courier appointment?" The guard's tone was polite but guarded, as though he'd been trained to neutralize any potential threat before it could materialize. I'm just here to see the team. I wanted to congratulate them on the quarter. My name is... Security protocol, the guard interrupted, voice flat. He checked a small screen clipped to his belt, focusing on it with the solemnity of a judge delivering verdicts. No appointments, no credentials provided. He looked up, eyes narrowing. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The beaten path of insult was familiar to Marcus. Years ago, when he had first broken into finance, he had been stopped at the door of every prestigious firm he approached. They looked past the brilliance in his MBA transcripts, past the code on his resume, straight to the color of his skin and the cut of his clothes. Today, he wore a hoodie and sneakers by choice, a choice meant to test the bank he founded. Now, he realized, that test would be more damning than any customer satisfaction survey. "I'm the founder of this bank," Marcus said calmly. He spoke slowly, letting each syllable land. "I built it. I funded it. I set its mission. My office is on the 20th floor." The guard's face registered something like recognition, quickly replaced by the same blank professionalism. "I'm not aware of any founder in this lobby. You need to step outside, sir." Before Marcus could press further, a woman at the reception desk, a petite brunette in a conservative blazer, stood as if on cue. Her purse clutched to her chest, her eyes widening at the sight of him. One hand hovered near a red button tucked beneath her desk. "Guests enter through the side entrance," she declared, tone clipped, and leaned back as if to make room for someone more important. With a polite nod that concealed his frustration, Marcus took a step back. He mouthed, "5 minutes," but neither guard nor receptionist heard. The turnstiles clicked open for a sharply dressed banker with a tailored suit and a leather briefcase, and that man glided past Marcus without a second glance. Just then, a third figure appeared. Branch manager Jonathan Hudson, the very man Marcus had summoned to deliver his personal congratulations, and more importantly, his gratitude. Hudson's face was a mask of composure, but his eyes flicked to the guard, then to Marcus. "Mr. James," Hudson began, an echo of something like apology in his voice. Hudson's gaze flicked down at Marcus's hoodie, then back up to the guard's unsmiling face. He cleared his throat. "I'm afraid we've had some incidents lately. We've tightened security. I'm sure you understand." "Some incidents?" Marcus repeated. "Attempts to break in? Security breaches?" Hudson smiled tensely, hands lifting in a pacifying gesture. "Yes, attempts. Fraud. Impersonation. We can't take risks." Marcus closed his eyes, took a breath. When he opened them, the tension had melted into steel. "Jonathan," he said, voice low, "I built this. Literally, I put every brick in place, and yet I'm treated as if I walked off the street dressed as a security threat." Hudson's composure faltered for a heartbeat. The receptionist's finger hovered over the button. The guard's hand drifted toward his radio. They saw a man dressed like a hooded courier, but what they refused to see was their own boss. "I'm sorry," Hudson said at last, too softly. He looked around, as if in search of an escape clause in the lobby's spotless walls. "I really must insist." With that, Marcus turned on his heel and walked out, each step echoing off the polished floors like a verdict thudding in a courtroom. As he passed through the doors, the late-morning bustle resumed almost immediately, as though the drama had been a mere hallucination. Outside, the breeze felt different, sharper, more biting. He slid his phone from his pocket and tapped a contact he rarely invoked. No preamble, just one word. Now. 40 minutes later, a sleek convoy rolled up. Black sedans lined like honor guards. Photographers snapped from behind velvet ropes. Reporters' cameras flared as Marcus emerged, now clad in an impeccably tailored suit that seemed to hum with authority. They clustered at the curb, shouting questions. "Mr. James, what brings you here today? Is this a corporate takeover? Why are you back in the lobby after what happened?" He strode toward the entrance once more, arms carrying a heavy leather binder filled with press releases, legal notices, and a stack of termination orders. The guard on duty paled as Marcus approached. The receptionist froze mid-breath, phone still in one hand. "Gentlemen, ladies," Marcus began, voice calm but resonant, so that every corner of the lobby felt the vibration. 15 minutes ago, you saw a man in a hoodie turned away at your door. You treated him like everyone you consider outsiders, unworthy of a second look. But that man was me. He flicked the binder open and held up a crisp, typed page. "This is a press statement. This is a list of every employee involved in today's unfortunate display of due diligence. These are the orders revoking their security clearances and termination letters, effective immediately." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. The guard stammered. The receptionist's phone fell from her trembling fingers. Hudson stepped forward, lips parted as if to protest, but no words came. Marcus closed the binder with a snap that resonated more forcefully than any gavel. This bank was founded so people who have been excluded all their lives, by signature, by color, by background, could find acceptance. Yet today, you judged me by a sweatshirt, not by my contributions. He paused, letting the shame settle in every polished tile. Then, softer, lesson learned, I hope. From now on, every client, every potential employee, every visitor will be welcomed based on their talents and aspirations, not on appearances. We will begin rolling out a new policy this afternoon. With that, Marcus turned and walked away, leaving a stunned hush in his wake. Through the glass doors, midday light poured in, illuminating every face frozen in the aftermath of a reckoning. They had tried to exclude their founder. Instead, they witnessed the return of his power and the fall of their own complacency. As the doors swung closed, Marcus paused at the entrance one last time. The cameras clicked. The reporters scribbled. He allowed himself a small, wry smile. In their eyes, he wasn't just a CEO. He was the living embodiment of every promise they'd built this institution on. And he was just getting started. He slid behind the wheel of his unmarked sedan, the engine's purr a small comfort against the raging storm inside him. The sun had dipped lower, long fingers of orange light stretching across the pavement, as though reaching to clutch at his heels. His knuckles pressed white against the steering wheel, heartbeat pulsing in his throat. Marcus James, a man accustomed to orchestrating multi-million-dollar deals and navigating corporate mazes, felt a familiar, bitter echo every time he looked back at the bank's gleaming facade. Betrayal. He'd just been cast out of his own creation, not by a hostile takeover, not by an aggressive shareholder revolt, but by the very employees he'd invited to build a new future. Security had barred him at the door. The branch manager had dismissed him as though he were a petty criminal. The receptionist had hidden behind her desk, finger twitching at the panic button, as though that small red switch could protect her from facing the truth. Her blindness to talent, her blindness to leadership, could cost her everything. In the rearview mirror, the bank's stately pillars receded into the evening haze. Marcus took a breath and let it out slowly, then tapped his phone's screen 3 times. A voice answered on the second ring. Cool, composed, ready. My status? He said, voice low. Everything's in place, came the reply. We've got legal, press, the whole team. They're on standby. He paused. The reverberation of injustice still hummed through his veins. Then let's remind them who holds the gavel. Chapter 2. You just fired yourself. The convoy arrived before the streetlights even flickered on. Black sedans slipped to a halt curbside, engines muted in solidarity. Journalists leaned through open windows, cameras trained on the front door, eager for the next twist in this unfolding saga. Security guards, uniformed and off, clustered along the sidewalk, uncertain whether to let him pass. Marcus emerged from the lead car dressed in a tailored midnight blue suit that whispered authority. No hoodie, no sneakers, no camouflage of the overlooked. This was the uniform of unequivocal command. He carried a slim leather portfolio, the weight of its contents far heavier than its appearance, that held his call to arms, orders of divestiture, lists of terminated policies, and the names and photos of every person responsible for the indignity he'd suffered. The air was electric, charged by every flashbulb and every hushed whisper. Pedestrians paused in their evening commute, drawn in by the presence of something extraordinary. The founder of the bank, returning not to plead for grace, but to dispense judgment. He paused at the curb, surveying the scene. There to his left, a pair of young reporters in pressed blazers jostled for the best vantage. To his right, an agitated cluster of onlookers murmured among themselves. Who is he? What's he doing back there? Is he taking over? Marcus stepped forward, heels clicking on the pavement like punctuations to a damning thesis. Two guards approached, hands drifting toward their radios. Their badges gleamed under the street lamps, symbols of authority, yet powerless against the force that was about to enter their building. "Gentlemen," Marcus said without raising his voice, yet every head whipped toward him. "I'm here on business." The nearest guard's eyes widened. "Modest, sir, you can't—" "I think," Marcus interrupted flatly, "that I've earned the right to come and go as I please." He moved past them, straight up the marble steps, each stride a statement. Cameras clicked like the ticking of a clock, counting down the seconds until something monumental would happen. He reached the revolving doors, doors he had donated, doors he had christened, and held out a hand. "This way," he said, as the glass panels spun open for him. Inside, the lobby was still a tableau of stunned shock. The receptionist, clutching her phone with trembling fingers, gaped at him as though a ghost had materialized. The guard who had barred his entrance earlier took a half-step back, mouth agape. Manager Jonathan Hudson, who had written him off as an imposter, stood frozen, a rayon tie undone in his startled grip. Marcus strode across the lobby, eyes sweeping the rows of cubicles and the balconies overhead. He could almost taste the tension, thick and metallic. He stopped at the foot of the grand staircase and set his portfolio on a polished pedestal table, a silent altar to the reckoning to come. A hush fell. Even the ambient music piped in for mood enhancement seemed to falter. He opened the leather cover and withdrew a stack of glossy photo prints. "These," he said, voice resonant, "are the portraits of those whose meager prejudices led to a massive blunder." He lifted the top photo, a snapshot of the guard who had denied him entry, the same guard now pale and unsure. Next came the receptionist, caught mid-call, her expression a perfect freeze frame of fear. Then Hudson, mid-smile, oblivious as he extended a dismissive hand. Under each face, in bold print, was a single sentence: "Terminated. Effective immediately." Murmurs rippled through the lobby. "This bank," Marcus continued, pacing slowly before the stunned audience, "was founded on the principle that opportunity should be blind to color, blind to wardrobe, blind to background. Over the years, we have opened doors for countless dreamers, but today, we chained shut our own door and locked out our founder." He allowed that to sink in, letting every eye in the room focus on him. "And so," he said, "I am here to correct that mistake." He lifted a second stack of papers. "These are the orders removing security clearances. Security contracts will be renegotiated, and these—" He opened the leather portfolio to reveal an array of internal memos. "Are the new directives for our security policy. No discrimination, no shortcuts, no profiling by appearance. You will be trained. You will be audited. You will be accountable." He paused, looking around at faces reddened by shame. Some averted their eyes. Others stood rooted, mouths agape. "But there's more," he said, a steely edge entering his tone. "I've prepared a new organizational chart." He flipped the portfolio open again, revealing thumbnails. 20 names, 20 photos, 20 titles. From this moment, these individuals will lead your departments. They're chosen not for the sheen of their suits, but for the substance of their accomplishments. Like the woman in communications who nearly lost her sight, but never lost her voice. Or the loan officer who built an entire small business portfolio from scratch, despite a criminal record that this bank wrote off in less than a week. Whispers of recognition spread through the crowd. She's the one. He was that underdog. Marcus met their eyes, nodding. Yes, these leaders will chart our course forward. He closed the portfolio and looked at Hudson, who stood unmoving. Jonathan, he said quietly, you're welcome to watch from afar. I'll need your badge back. Hudson's hand rose to remove it, his gaze fixed on the polished floor. Behind him, staff members were already gathering around the thumbnails pinned to the portfolio, pointing and murmuring approval. Cameras rolled, capturing the moment this bank transcended its own shortcomings. Marcus pocketed the photographs, stepping back. Let this be a lesson, he addressed them all, that no institution, however venerable, is immune to the biases of its people. But every institution can change if its leadership is determined. He turned toward the conference room doors at the back of the lobby. Now, he continued, let's get to work. We have a quarter to exceed, reputations to rebuild, and a mission to reaffirm. As he led the way down the corridor, journalists jockeyed for sound bites. Mr. James, can you tell us about your new leadership team? Is this a permanent shakeup? What assurances can you give against future discrimination? Marcus paused at the threshold of the boardroom, looking over his shoulder. This bank belongs to every person who walks through its doors with hope, not prejudice, he said. And I will see that it remains so. He stepped inside, closing the doors softly behind him. The corridor fell silent, except for the clicking of shutters and the rapid exhalations of realization. Outside, the evening sky deepened to indigo, and the bank's windows glowed like lanterns of accountability in a changing world. Marcus James had returned not as a threat, but as a reckoning. And in the polished foyer behind him, a new chapter was beginning. One where leadership wore no hoodies and power bowed to principle. The conference room was more cavernous than most, its walls sheathed in dark walnut panels and punctuated by narrow slits of frosted glass. A single oval table stretched nearly its full length, surrounded by high-backed leather chairs that gleamed under the recessed lighting. On one end, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city's skyline, towering steel and glass monuments to ambition. Today, though, that panorama felt hollow, a backdrop to the reckoning Marcus James was about to deliver. He paused in the doorway, adjusting the lapels of his suit jacket, not out of vanity, but to settle the weight of expectation on his shoulders. He wasn't wearing a tie. He had discarded it deliberately the moment he left the lobby, a small gesture of solidarity with every person who'd ever been judged by the markers of conformity. Power, he intended to show, didn't need the gilded trappings. Seated around the table were the 14 newly appointed leaders Marcus had unveiled, each chosen for merit rather than pedigree. A tall woman with a steady gaze who'd risen through the ranks of credit analysis despite early setbacks. The communications director who'd turned a near-catastrophic PR crisis into an opportunity for genuine dialogue. The compliance officer whose own record of overcoming prejudice had made him a relentless champion for fair policy. Many had never shared a room together before. Now, they looked at one another with a mixture of pride and palpable nervousness. At the far end, in a vacant seat, their former boss, Jonathan Hudson, shifted uncomfortably. He wore a conventional gray suit with a tie already loosened, an unconscious echo of the one he'd tried to hang on in the lobby. Marcus had asked him to stay. After all, some witnesses should see the new order taking shape firsthand. A hush fell as Marcus crossed the carpet, his footsteps muffled but sure, and took the head of the table. He set his portfolio down, opened it, and laid out 3 neat stacks of documents. The agenda, the revised corporate ethics charter, and individualized empowerment packets for each of their teams. He looked around, meeting every eye in the room. "I thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began, voice measured but resonant. "I realize this is unconventional, but today we set a new course for this institution, one that aligns with the mission I first articulated when I founded Providence Trust. We're here to reshape not just policy, but the very fabric of our culture." The communications director, Elena Morales, straightened. She cleared her throat. "Mr. James, may I?" "Please," he said, nodding. "Elena, from the moment you intercepted that viral video last quarter, you insisted that we respond not with canned apologies, but with authentic stories of our clients' successes. We went from a 12% trust metric to 68% in mere weeks. That's the kind of leadership we need," Marcus said. He slid her packet forward. "Use this to align your department. I want monthly town halls, recorded and published externally, where we spotlight clients from all walks of life. Let their voices guide our brand." Elena's eyes glistened. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Next was Joshua Patel, the veteran compliance officer. Marcus turned to him. "Joshua, you navigated the labyrinth of the recent regulatory overhaul and saved us millions in potential fines by identifying a loophole that would have devastated small business loans. Now, I want you to chair a new diversity and inclusion committee. Permanent, reporting directly to me. Let's draft policies that safeguard against the kind of profiling we saw today." Joshua nodded, swallowing hard. "Understood. I already have a few proposals drafted." One by one, Marcus acknowledged each leader's past achievements and outlined his expectations. Then he laid the third stack of papers before them. Letters of apology, drafted in the authentic voices of the lobby guard, the receptionist, and the branch staff who'd turned him away. "These letters go out today," he said quietly. "We each carries personal reflections on what went wrong and what they'll do to make amends. We'll send them not just to me, but to every client who felt unwelcome here." A murmur rippled around the table. He looked at Hudson. "Jonathan, you'll oversee the distribution and follow-up. Accountability must be transparent." Hudson's face reddened. He opened his mouth, paused, and exhaled. "Yes, Mr. James, I will." The last thing Marcus did before they adjourned was stand and look at each of them. Without a tie, he still cut a powerful silhouette. His broad shoulders squared, his gaze unwavering. He folded his hands behind his back. Some may see this as a freak occurrence, the founder returning in a suit and firing a few people. But this is bigger than any one person. It's about institutional integrity. I need you to carry that message forward." Elena shifted in her seat, raising a probing question. "How will we measure progress? How do we know we're not simply papering over biases with lip service?" He smiled, pleased by the challenge. "Good question. That's why I've created a new metrics dashboard, combining quantitative data like client retention across demographics with qualitative data from exit interviews and anonymous surveys. We'll review it every quarter. We'll publish the results. If we don't improve, we invite external auditors to scrutinize us. We leave nothing in the shadows." The room hummed with a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus closed his portfolio. "Thank you. Let's get to work." Hours later, outside the building, Marcus paused on the steps to survey the changing sky. The sun had set completely. The city lights sparkled like a galaxy of tiny beacons. The lobby windows glowed warmly behind him. Inside, staffers moved through the halls with a different energy, some tentatively hopeful, others wary, all acutely aware that nothing would ever be quite the same. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an old photograph. the moment he'd first cut the ribbon at Providence Trust's grand opening a decade before. Surrounded by smiling faces, he'd worn that day a crisp shirt and tie. Back then, his focus had been on ambition. Today, he realized, it was on justice. A familiar voice at his side made him turn. Elena was there, her clipboard tucked under her arm. "Are you proud of us?" she asked. He studied her earnest eyes, her poised posture. "Yes," he said simply, and a little scared, because real change is messy, it's uncomfortable. But if we do it right, Providence Trust will be a beacon, not because of profits, but because of principles. She nodded. "I won't let you down, Marcus." He offered her the photograph. "Keep this, as a reminder of why we started." She took it, holding it to her chest. "Thank you." As she walked away, Marcus let the breeze ripple his suit jacket. No tie, no facade. He had the power to enforce change, and the humility to know it would take more than one day to reshape centuries of prejudice. But tonight was a beginning, a testament that leadership could come without the trappings of conformity, that authority could speak more loudly through action than through attire. He turned back toward the doors and re-entered, ready for the long night of meetings ahead. In the haloed glow of the lobby, shadows danced across the marble floor, an echo of the old system trying to reclaim its hold. But Marcus James stepped forward, unworried. He held the gavel now, and his brand of justice would not be hushed by tradition or bias. Thus began the next chapter of Providence Trust, where vision met vigilance, and power was measured not by a tie or a title, but by the integrity to wield it wisely.